Kardec. I have him up on the screen. It's Allan Kardec, The Spirit's Book. And of course, you can find Allan Kardec, The Spirit's Book on PDF, so it doesn't cost you anything to learn about Spiritism. Before I begin in earnest, please subscribe, hit the bell, leave comments, give us a thumbs up. That way we can spread the word about why you are on Earth, and we can help the Earth move to a better state, a planet of regeneration. Where we are now is a planet of atonement, where we live life after life, paying for our past wrongs. Eventually, if we all work together, we'll be on a planet of regeneration where there is less hate, envy, wars, inequality, chaos in the world. So let's start on the NDE. Now, this NDE is in the book, The Spirit World Talks to Us. And this is about Yvonne. Now, some people have distressing encounters with the spirit world. And some people have distressing encounters with other individuals in their life that are soon forgotten. But Yvonne had several real-life physical encounters that piled one up after another. She was devastated and exhausted. She called her sister and told her that she was going to die, to just expire, fade away, and allow her soul to leave her body. She had given up hope. She laid down, felt her body shutting off, and landed immediately in heaven. Now, for a little background story, I first met Yvonne when she contacted me and asked what would be the preferred order to read the series of books by the spirit author Andre Luis, psychographed by Francisco Chico C. Xavier. After she had 2 near-death experiences, she was looking for answers and confirmation of what she felt, heard, and saw. Now, those books are wonderful books, and I recommend everyone. And the first book in the series is Nossolar, Nossolar. You can find that in Kindle and Amazon, and you go to my website, NW Spiritism, click on the picture of Allan Kardec, and you can find that book also and order it from a Spiritist bookstore. Now, she also told me that her second NDE, she had met Christ. It motivated her to explore more about heaven and the spiritual world. She knew there were many levels of heaven and wished to learn more. So I inquired about her, near-death experience. I said, what happened? She pointed me to an interview she did with Lee Whitting of International Organization for Near-Death Studies on NDE radio. And so I was curious. You can probably look that up by looking up IANDS or NDE radio and Yvonne, and you can probably find that on YouTube. I have a link to that in the bibliography in my book, The Spirit World Talks to Us. Now, so therefore I decided to listen to the whole interview. So in listening to the interview, Yvonne had a very rich NDE experience. She returned with a complete understanding of the basis for everything in the spirit world: love. Not the first impression hormonal excitement or the onset of sexual relations type of love that ripples through your body and makes you anxious. No, the type of love that enters every cell and washes you into a warm glow. The type that would make you think you could meditate for hours, even though your record is 4 minutes of not letting your mind wander or fall asleep. Now, Yvonne is French. She has worked in a consulate in Belgium. She was raised Christian and attends a non-denominational Christian church. And she came to the United States 11 years ago. Her life was shattered after she experienced traumatic events with 4 or 5 people. She wasn't suicidal. She was just worn out and empty. Yvonne told the interviewer that I felt I was reaching the end of my life. She told us that I called my sister and I said, I think I'm dying. And next she reported, I laid on the couch and felt my body shutting down. Then, seemingly without hesitation, she appeared in heaven. There was no tunnel experience. It was as if she teleported to another world. So Yvonne suddenly popped into existence in a different world. She was alone. The light was dispersed, as if filtered by a misty fog. What was most strange was her feelings. She felt blissful, full of peace and joy. We are ingrained with images from movies and television series that when we first encounter a new world, we feel threatened. Our senses are on high alert. as if we need to be ready for any alien danger which may swoop down on us. For Yvonne, it was just the opposite. Instead of a wave of fright and goosebumps, she relaxed. For the first time in a long duration, her entire body was at ease. Not a single cell was on guard. She was open. Yvonne, in the middle of a luminous fog, looked around and she said, "Suddenly, from a distance, I saw something." And she reported in her YouTube interview that she saw what she said is, "Imagine a flame of fire. Instead of fire, it was energy. Imagine a face." Now, she said she knew it was Jesus. He said, "He engulfed me with his body that was made of energy." Yvonne felt what she had never felt before, pure love. She tells us what she thought as she first embraced the high spirit she recognized as Jesus. Now, quote, "I knew it was Jesus. He engulfed me with his whole body that was made of energy. At that moment, I felt the love of a father and mother blend in one. It was not a he and not a she, it was one. I think on earth, love has been divided into a male type of love and a female type of love. Jesus has blended in both." Now, this is what's so exciting about NDEs because they discover on their own exactly what Spiritism has told us. What Yvonne identified in Jesus, which is a perfect balance of both sexes, is what is in store for us. As we ascend in the hierarchy of spirits, becoming more loving, caring, fraternal, and wise, we begin to combine the masculine and feminine sides more completely. This is part of our reason for incarnating on Earth. We must be trained in active and passive behavior, in bold action, and in quiet sympathy. The spirit realm, under the directions of Jesus, has fashioned our planet to train us in both aspects of male and female behavior and characteristics. And they use the differentiation of the sexes to not only serve as training for us in countless lives, but also to push civilization to a higher plane. Now, in the book, In the Greater World, there is this quote: "The control center of sex is not located in the dense body, but in the sublime organization of the soul." Now, this book was written by the spirit Andre Louise, who died and found himself in the lower zone. So, I was intrigued about this passage about sex. If there was anything about us that seemed to be rooted in our dense, primitive, and often brutish bodies, it is sex. But Andre Louise's mentor tells us what sex means in the higher spiritual regions and how it molds us here on earth. This is the quote from the book. "Down on earth, men and women are distinguished according to specific organic features. As for us, in transit to higher spiritual regions, the remembrance of our earthly existence is still predominant. We know, however, that in such higher regions, femininity and masculinity are characteristics of souls that are highly passive, are openly active." End quote. Hence, sex is an attitude, or more succinctly, an attribute. Attributes that we acquire throughout our many lives. Andre Louise's mentor describes the process further. I'll start the quote. "Consequently, we know that in the variations of our experiences, we gradually acquire divine qualities such as determination and tenderness, strength and humility, power and gentleness, intelligence and sentiment, initiation and intuition, wisdom and love, until we attain our supreme balance in God." End quote. So, what are they telling us? As we progress, we learn to balance the active and passive sides of our nature. Now, every spirit is unique and all will have different degrees, but all who ascend into purity will achieve a balance. Andre Louise's mentor tells us that the human race started out like animals, where the male possessed the female. But given millennia of slow evolution, the combinations of woman mother and man father migrated to the concept of the tribe, the primitive shelter changed into the home, and the quest for wild game transformed into the farm. From this, the spark of sex, the civilization arose. The wooden club of the caveman became the gift of flowers to his love. And we must all travel this road to perfect balance. The mentor describes our journey. I'll quote: "Sometimes Humans take years, centuries, and many lifetimes to go from one level to the next. Few individuals are able to keep themselves above the fray with the equilibrium that is required. Very few have crossed the territory of ownership without battling cruelly with the monsters of selfishness and jealousy to which they have completely surrendered. A small number travel the road of tenderness without shackling themselves for a long stretch to the many chains of exclusiveness. And sometimes only after millennia of excruciating, purifying trials can the soul reach the luminous zenith of sacrifice for its final deliverance en route to a new cycles of unification with the divinity. So we've all seen stories where, a man is so possessive and he hurts his girlfriend or wife because she wants to leave him. And that's all primitive emotions. Whereas, if someone wants to leave you, okay, you can talk and argue and try to work it out, of course, but you don't possess anyone. No woman possesses a man, no man possesses a woman, no one possesses anyone else. And that's what they're trying to tell us. So, therefore, we own no one, we direct no one, we merely love, cherish, and help one another. And in the meantime, we always provide feedback for the spiritual benefit of our partner. We don't possess them, but we help them. Each one of us learning to weigh our active and passive sides, learning to know when one side is better than the other in different circumstances. This is why, now, in the spiritist literature, in my books, Heaven and Below, series first in a series of 3, they say that, look, the spirit world could have made just one sex on the earth. And they made 2 sexes because they had to break the problem down so people can learn. You need to learn the male side of behavior, the active, but again, the good and bad parts of that. And you need to learn the female behavior, the active and passive side of the female behavior and the active and passive side of the male behavior. And it's kind of all combination of 4 is when you need to meld all those together as you go up. And this is why we have marriage and relationships, so we can learn from one another. So, in essence, Yvonne came to the correct conclusion about Jesus. For not only Jesus, but we too shall at some future time combine the best of both attributes. For Yvonne, the love emanating from Jesus was special beyond beliefs. She tells us, he kissed my face like a mother would kiss a newborn baby. He kissed my face, he even kissed my lips in a very pure way, like a mother would kiss her baby. Yvonne felt that Jesus combined the attributes of an ideal set of parents that Yvonne never had. She reveals an important aspect of her childhood. I'll quote, I think that I experienced that because I didn't grow up with my parents. So maybe he wanted to make sure I got the love of the ideal parents, and that was beautiful. I felt love. I felt for the first time in my life, I felt I was with my parents. They were loving me. I felt I was 4 years old and I was on my parents' lap. And you feel like nothing can happen to you because they are holding you. Nothing can harm you because you are theirs. This is what I felt with Jesus because I was his, not in a possessive way, but in a loving, protective way. Now, the high spirit, who Yvonne identified as Jesus, knew her history and realized what she desired after her troubling episodes. She needed pure love, parental love, love that doesn't ask anything, and that is what she received. Our path on earth is programmed so that we too one day can provide the depth of feeling that Yvonne felt to others. People who are not our children or immediate or extended family, but to the entire world. The path is difficult and entails trials and lives that are fraught with discrimination and danger. It involves incarnating as a gender one isn't used to. The reason is to fully experience humanity in all of its variations. Now, let's talk about changing genders. In the Spirit's book, we are told that a spirit can be reincarnated as either sex, but we aren't told if spirits alternate or stay the same sex in life after life. In the books by Francisco C. Xavier, we learn that families tend to reincarnate and spirits of one sex tend to remain in that gender. Higher spirits lose their gender after countless thousands of years of lives and experiences. They have balanced the characteristics of both sexes. Hence, it appears that changing gender is a slow evolving process for many spirits. But in the book Action and Reaction, one of the Andre Luis's series of books, psychographed by Francisco C. Xavier, we learn of other reasons why spirits are sent back to Earth in a different gender than the one they had last time. Now, a spirit named Silas, who was Andre's mentor, in the book Action and Reaction, talks about the alteration of gender for a spirit from one life to another. This is a quote from him. Considering that, in essence, sex is the sum of the passive and positive qualities of the person's mental field, it is natural for the predominantly female spirit to linger for centuries on the evolutionary path as a woman. Likewise, the predominantly male spirit will tarry for a long time in the experiences of man. However, on many occasions, when the man tyrannizes the woman, denying her rights and committing abuses in the name of his supposed superiority, he distorts himself to the point that, unconscious and imbalanced, he is led by the agents of the divine law to a pain-filled reincarnation in a woman's body, so that, in extreme inner discomfort, he may learn to venerate woman as his sister and companion, daughter and mother before God. The same applies to the offensive woman who, after dragging the man into lust and criminality, creates for herself a terrible mental annihilation that she takes with her after the grave, thereby requiring interment in a man's body, so that in the webs of her unhappy emotions, she may construct within her the respect she owes to man before the Lord. End quote. So therefore, those who take advantage of either sex, right, to harm the other, will spend time in the same type of body as their previous victims. It is a corollary of the golden rule that is used to teach us our wrongs. Others will do unto you as you have done unto them. So, let's go back to Yvonne. So, from her time in the spirit world, Yvonne, washed in love, realized that heaven is filled with love. And she said in the interview a couple quotes. She says that life permeated love, every single thing is love, and love emanated from the creator of all. So not only Yvonne has told this, but other people who have had near-death experiences and other spirits have communicated with mediums on Earth have stated the same principle. In January 1914, Zabdiel spoke to the Reverend G. Val Owen, who compiled the messages he received from a series of spirits in the book Life Beyond the Veil, spanning many sections. The series of conversations from Zabdiel from November 1913 to January 1914 are documented in the Highlands of Heaven section. Now, all of the books by G. Val Owen, I have condensed his information plus information from other Spiritist authors to back up what the different spirits told Reverend G. Val Owen. And my first book is Book 1, Heaven and Below, Book 1 of Spiritism, the Spirit World Revealed to an Anglican Vicar. Book 2 are Spirits and Spirits Attributes, and Book 3, How We Are Guided by Spirits. So if you would like to understand and know the organization, the process, how we are spirits, what makes us up, how we progress, how we are led, this is the series of 3 books you may want to look at. So in this particular communication, Expounding on Love, Zabdiel, the spirit Zabdiel, notifies us that the universe is founded on the unity of forces under the command of love. A simple process, but complex in the adaptation of this force. He tells us when these vibrations of spiritual activity reach the cosmos of matter, the perplexity of adaptation and coordination is very much increased. He says that all spiritual power is based on love. Zabdiel describes the power of love as being the root of everything. Zabdiel introduces us to what love means in a very high level of heaven. This is his quote. Love strengthens unless love weakens in ratio to its lack. Every stream of power which comes from the Supreme Father for use in his service. They who have come so far as to this sphere are able, by what wisdom they have come at, to absorb into their personalities to see the trend of things. We see, as if we get toward the unapproachable light, that all things are trending towards one central principle, and that is love. We see love at the source of all things. So, as if on cue, Yvonne witnessed a demonstration of love in the spirit world. The sky was blue, there was light, so she could see all around her. The curious fact that she could detect no sun in the sky, it was merely bright. This condition is similar to other reports from near-death experiences and from spirits. The more love, the higher the luminosity. As spirits ascend from one level of heaven to the next, the light becomes brighter because the love becomes more intense. As she was walking with Jesus, who had filled her with renewed energy, she noticed a person beside her. She turned and saw a dozen child angels, a mix of colors of all the races. One of them looked at her. Then she pivoted and looked at Jesus. All of the children ran to Jesus. Jesus told the children that it is Yvonne's time, so go back to your teachers. Yvonne reported Jesus said that was the utmost love. She saw the teachers, and they were beautiful. They were magnificent. They were glowing and looking at her with compassion, respect, and veneration. She felt that nothing and no one could ever harm her in this magnificent kingdom. So the children departed, and Yvonne and Jesus continued walking towards a crystal city. Yvonne felt she went into the city, but was not allowed to retain any memories of her time inside. But we do have reports from other spirits about heavenly cities. And a high spirit has told us about a crystal city in heaven. And I will quote, this is what Zabdiel said in one of his communications with Reverend G. Owen. This is from Zabdiel. I'll start the quote. The great gate of this palace is of liquid stone. That is quite literally to be read. The stone was not solid, but in flux, and the colors of the gate changed from moment to moment, affected both by what went forward within the house and also by what was a gate upon the plain before it. It was also affected from the watchtowers on the plain, but only by those on this side, not by others on the other side of the city, which were in touch with stations on the other sides of the palace. It was very beautiful to look at that gateway, massive on either side and blending into the wall of the main structure, solid above the square arch and changing in beauty as the colors change. One part only was constant, and that was the great keystone in the middle above, which always and ever shone red for love. So that's what Zabdiel said. Again, here is a spirit backing up what Yvonne saw. This is what's so wonderful about exploring people's near-death experiences. They see these things and they think only they saw it and only they discovered it. But when you read and study Spiritism and then you read NDEs, you'll see, well, of course they saw that. That's what Spiritism said they would see. You see this time and time again. This is why I've written 2 books on the subject, to show you that Spiritism is backed up not only by communications from spirits, but from people's own visions and own near-death experiences. And these are from people who had no knowledge of Spiritism, never read any of the Spirits book. And some people have read, who read that after I, somehow they saw my article about their NDE, then they contact me and then I talk to them and then they start reading about Spiritism and read my books. They go, oh my God, now I understand. I understand more. They even understand more of what they didn't write about, right? Because you can't write everything of what you see. And they're just like, okay, this makes sense. This what makes sense. This explains why we're on this world. This explains why things happen, because we're here on Earth going through a physical body for relatively small period of time, so we can improve ourselves, so we get better and better spirits and go higher in the hierarchy. And there's just so much more to learn. But this is why it's exciting to people, and I think it can be exciting to you too. So what I just read was Zabdiel describing a capital city on the 5th sphere of heaven above the earth. And so he talks about edifices created beyond our capabilities and superior to our imagination, all made possible by higher spirits who possess the skill to create with not their hands, but by thought. Groups of skilled spirits cooperate in planning and building towers, palaces, lakes, parks, everything that is desired and needed for life in the spirit realm. Hence, the architecture is only limited by the creative powers of the artists who were given this task to conjure the requested object. Now, think of this. Earth is a tough place. You learn a lot of tough, difficult lessons on Earth. But why? Why do we have to become better? Why do we have to become perfect? Why do we have to be calm in every circumstance? Because as you go higher and higher in heaven, the power of your mind becomes more and more immense. And people, groups of spirits get together and create whole cities, houses, lakes, environments. This is why we must get rid of all primitive emotions. Now let's talk about the city some more. Zabdal describes his entry into the city. I'll start the quote. We passed within and found many roomy chambers about the gateway, in which were recorders who read the messages and influences coming at the gate, divided them into their own proper groups, and sent them whither they should go. They had expected our coming, and 2 youths were waiting in the roadway beyond the gate to lead us to the angel Lord. We passed down the broad street, whereupon went people happy of face, as ever people are hereabout. I simply write it down for you who sometimes and often do not smile for contentment within us. For us it is as we should tell you, the sky today is blue in Egypt in the summertime. End quote. Imagine living contentedly day after day, the stress of coping with normal life, negative thoughts from others, danger looking in whatever direction you make is all erased. Imagine being surrounded by positive feelings, by beauty, by animals who are well treated and love their job if they have one. No sickness, no aging, no death ever. You are immortal. Where your day is full of work for the benefit of others, educational pursuits, and community, and the work you're doing, you want to do because you love doing it. And you don't have to do it all the time. You choose. That is life in the capital city in the 5th level of heaven. People are smiling. Now, Zabda had business to perform in the palace of the chief lord of the city. He describes the palace. We ascended the steps before it and passed beneath a porch which ran along its front and through a door into the central hall. It was also square, built with high pillars of liquid stone, like the gate, and these were also changing continuously in hue, but did not all wear that tint of color at any one moment as the gate did. They were diverse. There were 22 of them, and each was different. Seldom were 2 of them the same color at one time, and this gave a very pleasant aspect to the hall. They're also made to blend together with their beauties in the large dome of crystal above, and that was a sight even more lovely, and you must try to imagine, for it is beyond my power to describe. So next, Zabdal tells Reverend Jibao, there's usually just one city in chief, one major one major city that is responsible for governing all the other city and villages in their sphere. But in spheres 5, there are 3 chief lords who all rule over separate areas of the 5th sphere. And he tells us why. Now, this is interesting. The quote, the reason of this threefold domination is found in that this sphere stands at that altitude, which having attained, a choice has to be made as to the particular way to be followed thereafter. It is a kind of sorting room, as one would say, wherein are the inhabitants in the course of their sojourn there, classified into their proper groups, and proceed onward in that special branch of service for which they are most properly fitted. Now, end quote. So that's interesting. I've not found any more information on what are the 3 choices entail. I surmise there must be some fit into a combination of what a spirit wishes and the talent and capabilities of a spirit, which would point them in a certain direction. An analogy would be a technical organization where there is a career path for those who desire to stay technical and a parallel path for those who desire to rise in management. Next, Zabdal describes the locations of the 3 cities. These 3 cities stand near the borderland of a very large flat continent, and the line drawn through them would form an equilateral triangle. So isn't this interesting? I'll stop the quote for a second. It's just, heaven's organized. Heaven has cities. Even the lower zone has cities. Not nice cities. But this is like, heaven isn't just this cloud, right, where we kind of swim along and do nothing and are bored for eternity. Heaven's organized. People work. There are cities. There's there's things to do. There's people to talk to. Friends to be made. I carry on with the quote. For this reason, the broad roads of each city spread out from the largest square where stands the house, fan like through the city and onwards in right lines across the open country. These communicate with the other two chief cities and the settlements of the plain. But in the middle of the triangle, there is a temple of worship and offering, which stands within a large circular glade in the midst of a forest. With this temple, all the roads are linked up by other crossroads, and hither, at certain times and seasons, come deputies from the three cities and settlement under their charge to combine their worship of God. Thousands and tens of thousands come at one time from all quarters of that sphere, and it is a very wonderful sight to see. They come in parties and meet together in the glade, which is a large plain of grassland. There they mingle together, and all the different colors of that sphere, mingling also, make a pretty show to behold. End quote. So, one can detect in the spirit world works to promote solidarity and cooperation amongst all of its inhabitants. The structure of the heavens circling the earth is ring after ring of ever increasing support of the levels below it and the regions around and under the earth. There is an army of helpers watching us and waiting to assist. We only have to meditate and pray for guidance, and it will be provided. The same care for the populace of the fifth sphere of heaven is also afforded us, even more, for we are in the middle of great and arduous test. Zabdal reminds us of the tight bonds between spirits and foreshadows what life will be like in the spirit world when we arrive there. Now, I'll quote him again. But more lovely than these is the sense of unity in diversity. Some are beginning to progress onward in one direction and some in another, but over, in, and throughout that vast assembly, the one vibrant note of deep love pulsates, and all know that this is enduring, and whatever be their future destination can enable them to come at one another in whatever part of God's large domain they be forever. So there is no foreboding of coming separation. We know not any such here. For where love is, what you know as separation and its sorrow cannot come. Even on the earth, this would be so now had not man sinned, and so gone away from the right path of development. It will be hard for them to regain this now, but it is possible, for the faculty remains, and it is asleep unawakened except in very few. So, he's telling us, as Yvonne found out, that love is the overriding constant in the spirit realm. It infuses everything. With love comes understanding, calmness, and an absence of fear, since there is no anxiety, no stress when one is surrounded by love. So let's get back to Yvonne. So she went into the celestial city, which she does not remember. They didn't let her remember that. That's probably very true because they didn't want her to have too many fond memories. They wanted her to go back to the physical world. Yvonne said that she was shown episodes of her life on Earth. She describes them as 3D holograms. Again, this corresponds with other reports and reports from Spiritism. I wrote about a woman named Amy in my first book about near-death experiences. The name of the book is What Really Happens During Near-Death Experiences, according to Spiritism. Now, Amy had a wonderful experience full of visiting many aspects of the spirit world. One of her recollections were the opportunity to review her life, a practice so few of us perform with complete honesty and self-awareness. Amy reported her recollections of her life review. This is a quote from her. My guide stood by at a certain time. It's very difficult for me to place any of this in chronological order, as time felt so different there. And she's absolutely correct. There's no time there. It was as if many things happened at once and yet separately. So there are parts of this experience I can't honestly place in any order. And he lovingly stayed as my support while I had a kind of life review. I never felt chastised at all, even though I know I've been very cruel at times and have hurt many people. I've lost my temper in horrible ways, and I've had great trouble with forgiveness. And yet, I felt only love and understanding through the entire life review. What it felt like to me was that I was being given the opportunity and gift of being able to stand back and more fully understand and love myself. I was able to feel exactly what others around me had felt during my life. I understood how everything I did and said and even thought had touched others around me in one way or another. I was able to even enter the minds and emotional centers of many who had been around me and understand where they were coming from in their own thinking, how their own personal views and lives experiences brought them to the places each stood. I felt their own struggling and their own fears, their own desperate need for love and approval, and more than anything, I could feel how childlike everyone was. With every person I viewed, including myself, I was able to see and feel with a higher mind and eye. And and the feeling I had towards everyone was nothing less than what a loving mother would feel for her own children at toddler age. It was actually comical at moments. I could feel how the elders, as I will call them, there are those who are helpers on the other side who have mastered themselves in many or all ways and help work with us, see us and find so much humor in the way we do things. It might seem brutally annoying to consider when we are in the midst of a great argument or drama that is playing out in our lives that the elders view these things very much like when a mother sees her 2-year-old scream and cry and bop another child on the head with a stuffed animal. The mother doesn't want her child to fall apart and become hysterical and cry. She feels for her child, but at the same time, she sees a little bit of comedy in how seriously the child takes what is usually a trivial drama. She continues to love her child and thinks the world of it, hoping it will go on enjoying the day, living and learning. End quote. Now, Amy presents us with really two vital facts about ourselves and the spirit world, which is all backed up by Spiritism. First, she illustrates how we should love and look at ourselves from the point of view of the other person. Love entails forgiveness and understanding. Like any of us, at times we feel wrong and we blame the transgressor. We attribute a litany of ill will against the person who is the target of our scorn. We fail to sit back and place ourselves in the shoes of others. Yes, sometimes there may be a true desire to inflict harm, and even for this we must forgive, since that desire usually comes from some tragedy in that other person's past. We should understand the difficult trial that they are in and pray for their eventual success. But for the most time, that transgression is an innocent oversight. We should realize how all of us are constantly distracted by the vicissitudes of life and often lack the resolve to fully examine our action upon others. Now, secondly, Amy correctly echoes the sentiment of the spirit world that I have read in other Spiritist books. We are looked upon as children, barely able to decipher between right and wrong. And when we reincarnate, the hopes are high, but the expectations are low. Yvonne seconds what Amy also saw, that our spiritual guides love us. Yvonne also told us that Jesus said to me, I love my babies, I love humanity. Now, then something occurred that I had not read or heard from any other account. Jesus told Yvonne that he will show her how to love. He took her heart and put it in his heart. It was complete love. She could feel each emotion that Jesus has for humanity. Yvonne described the moment as imagine billions and billions of emotions of love. It was difficult for Yvonne to adequately put into words the myriad of emotions she felt at that intense coupling of hearts. And after the demonstration of love for an entire planet, Yvonne knew it was time to return to Earth to continue her journey through life. But this time she would be armed with the certainty that she was loved. She was constantly loved, even though others may not see it. She felt it and it gave her strength. So let's think about this. So the spirit world loves us. Now, as I talk about Spiritism and people ask me questions about Spiritism, and I say, well, we have to go in the next life because we have to learn, we have to pay back for our wrongs we did in a previous life. And people constantly ask me, well, God and Jesus, they forgive us for everything. And I always say, yes, they forgive us. And Yvonne and Amy said the same thing. They look at us as children. And when your child does something wrong, of course you forgive them because you know they are a child and they really haven't learned right from wrong yet. But that doesn't mean they must learn right from wrong. It doesn't mean that when a child paints on the wall or like runs out into the street, you put them in a corner right for a while. You give them a timeout. Now, As you give that child a timeout, they could be kicking and screaming, right? And they're in their mind, they could be yelling at you, and in their mind, you're thinking you are the worst monster in the world, right? I'm sure we've all been through that with those who have small kids. We are the same as adults. When we go through trials and tribulations and someone did something bad to us, we go, oh, that's horrible. I hate that person. But really, what it is the fact that we had done something similar to someone else, to what that person is doing to us or did to us in the present. And therefore, we put that into our character and personality, and we learn we never want to do that again to anyone. So God and Jesus loves us, but they're not going to ignore their duty and let us become uncivilized spirits. No, they're going to do the right thing and make sure we learn how to behave in the spirit world. And that's what happens. That's why we're here, to learn how to behave in the spirit world. We have to, because our power is so immense. And it's up to every one of us. Do you want to learn what you need to do to become a higher spirit, or do you want to park, as they say in the spirits literature, where you park on earth? And I know I've been told I have parked in many lives. What I mean by park is I don't improve, right? I still say, stay the selfish, person that I was, cruel and mean, and desire of other people's money, everything that, is wrong. That's probably what I've done. And again, that is why you should be able to forgive other people, because whatever you see someone do things, we've probably done the same. So I just want to so think about that. Study Spiritism. Here's my book, The Spirit World Talks to Us, 12 accounts from near death and other experiences. I'll have this link below. Please subscribe to this channel. Tell other people about Spiritism. Spiritism is so exciting. It explains everything. When I read the Spirits book for the first time, it was like, bingo, that light went on. And I go, now I understand. Now I understand everything. Questions I've had since I was 16, 17, 18 of why am I here? Why do we have to go through this thing? What happens after life? I was kind of worried about. I believed in God, but I believed God was far away. And now I know that spirits are all around us, and God permeates us. The love of God permeates us all the time. And we are watched and guided and loved like you cannot imagine. It's almost frightening, right? Everything we do is watched. Every thought we have is recorded. Spirits, and that's how in NDEs they say, I've had this previous life, right? This life review. How can they do that? So how can you show people what happened in previous lives? Not only what that person was thinking, but that people around them are thinking, without this huge complex organization to capture and record everything that happens, every thought by every human being, every animal maybe on earth and around the earth. Think about what that means, how complicated and sophisticated the spirit world is compared to what we are. That's why people who don't believe in, God or anything like that, I understand, right? God bless you. But when you think about these things, that people have near-death experience, can't be explained. People have had their own visions, their own strange encounters that cannot be explained by Spiritism. I mean, by scientific revelation, but can be explained by Spiritism. Like I, with my wife, had visions of the future through her near-death experiences that happened, and they were so specific. That's how I started my whole journey, right? Like, okay, if she knew 15 years ahead this was going to happen, how can that be unless our life is predetermined? And boy, when you find out your life's predetermined, it's like, oh, everything changes. Your whole view changes. And then I had to, okay, how much free will do we have versus what, right? And I read, we do have free will, but we go through these episodes. It's like you have the free will of a student in high school, let's say, for instance. The bell rings, you have to go to class 109. You have to sit there in that class. You're not going to get out of that class. 50 minutes later, the bell rings again, okay? Your free will is within that class, within an episode, right? That could be a career, or it could be, marriage or relationship, whatever. You're in that class, but your free will is your attitude and your character and your responses to the stimuli that you're here in that class. So anyway, I just want to say God bless everyone, and I hope everyone has a nice night. And I will be back here next Tuesday. I'm going to live stream on my YouTube channel every Tuesday and hopefully make this a regular thing. God bless everyone.